If you ever wake at exactly 3:07 in the morning and hear someone in the hallway softly testing your name, do not answer. Do not whisper it back. Do not even think it too clearly. There are buildings that collect rent, buildings that collect mold, and buildings that collect loneliness. But there are a few old places that collect something stranger. Tonight's story is about one of those places, an address that no map seems eager to keep, a hallway that bent like a bad thought, and a tenant named Elias who learned much too late that some houses do not want your money. They want the word that makes you real. This is Crooked Hour, Episode 1, The Hallway That Ate Names. Elias found the building in a rainstorm at the end of a narrow street where the lamps buzzed like trapped flies. The lease had been suspiciously cheap, the landlord impossible to reach by phone, and the listing photo had shown nothing but a clean window and a modest front door. In person, the place looked taller than it should have, as if extra floors had been stacked onto it in the dark. Windows glowed at uneven heights. Some were lit, some were black. A few looked, from the corner of the eye, like half-lidded eyes. Elias stood under the entrance with one suitcase in his hand and read the tarnished brass sign, St. Vay House. The rain hissed behind him. Somewhere above, something tapped on glass in a slow, patient rhythm, like fingers waiting to be invited in. Inside, the air felt stale and damp, carrying the smell of wet wallpaper, old metal, and something faintly sweet that had gone bad years earlier. The corridor beyond the lobby narrowed too quickly, as though the building were drawing a breath. Elias rolled his suitcase onto a faded red runner and immediately felt watched. Doors all along the hall sat slightly open. From the cracks, faces peered out, a woman with a grin too wide for the rest of her face, a man with huge sleepless eyes and a neck that leaned at a wrong angle, another figure with skin so pale it looked dusted with flour. None of them greeted him. None smiled like normal people smiled. They only tracked him with the quiet focus of people trying to remember where they had seen him before. At the end of the hall, a small placard pointed to room 17. The first strange thing happened before Elias even unpacked. He walked past room 14, then 15, then 16, then 17. He set his suitcase down, realized he had left his lighter in the lobby, and turned back. Only the hallway behind him did not lead where it should have. He passed 17 again, then 16, then 17 a second time. The red carpet curved as though it had softened in the heat. The walls arched inward. Framed portraits appeared where blank plaster had been moments before, and every painted face seemed to be looking in a slightly different direction than the last time he glanced at them. By the time he found the lobby again, he was breathing hard, and the old elevator at the end of the corridor was standing open, though he was certain it had been shut. From inside came a whisper, almost tender, "Elias, just checking." That evening he noticed the mailboxes. They were fixed to the wall opposite the stairwell, rows and rows of tarnished metal slots, each with a tiny label behind cloudy plastic. At first the names looked ordinary enough. Morrow, Klein, Duret, Vale. But when Elias leaned closer, the letters seemed to loosen. Ink bled, edges peeled. One surname was reduced to a smear. Another had missing vowels. Another looked as though someone had scratched it out with a fingernail and then changed their mind halfway through. When he pressed an ear near one of the slots, a current of cold air brushed his cheek. Then he heard whispering, too soft to parse, many voices speaking at once through metal mouths. He stepped back, and one loose scrap of paper drifted from a box, turned over in the air, and landed at his feet. On it, in trembling handwriting, was a single warning. Keep your name inside your teeth. Near midnight, Elias heard a cautious knock and opened his door to find two neighbors standing close together beneath the weak hall light. The first was a woman with enormous dark eyes and a smile stretched so wide it showed every tooth. The second was a narrow man whose face looked as if it had once been softened and then badly reset. Both seemed frightened of being seen there. The woman spoke first in a cheerful voice that did not match her expression. At 307, she said, the building walks. If it says your name, do not answer. The other neighbor tilted his head until something in his neck clicked. Write your name down, he whispered. Keep it on you. Say it before sleep. Say it when you wake. Elias tried to ask what they meant, but both of them flinched toward the far end of the corridor. Then, without another word, they slipped back into their rooms and shut the doors at the same exact second. Elias laughed at himself for feeling nervous. But he did write his name in a small notebook and set it on the bedside table. He spoke it aloud a few times, as though practicing for a role. Elias ran. Elias ran. Later, a faint scraping sound woke him. The digital clock read 3:07. Someone was moving just outside his room. There came a soft, polite knock, then a voice on the other side of the door. Not male, not female, warm, patient, and almost affectionate. Are you there? Elias opened the door a crack, then froze. The nameplate on room 17 was blank, not scratched out, blank, as though no letters had ever lived there. All along the hall, doors stood ajar. Shapes watched from inside, and from somewhere farther down, the same gentle voice asked again, this time with a hint of hunger, "Are you still cold something?" Then she appeared. The landlady, if landlady was the right word. She emerged from the bend in the corridor, so tall and narrow she seemed unfolded rather than born. Her dress hung straight as a funeral curtain. Her skin looked dry and thin, almost like paper held too near a candle. In one hand she carried a ring of old keys that chimed softly whenever she moved. She stopped beneath the flickering bulb and smiled with terrible courtesy. "Mrs. Vale," she introduced herself, as if the building had not already written her name everywhere it could still remember. "You are settling in, I hope." Elias asked what was happening. Mrs. Vale only lifted the keys and said the hallway keeps what is offered to it. Voices, footsteps, reflections, names. She came closer. Her eyes were calm and bottomless. "Tell me yours," she said, "and I can make sure it is filed properly." Elias backed away, clutching the notebook to his chest. He said his name under his breath again and again, but each repetition felt thinner, like ink running out in a pen. The hallway convulsed around him. The ceiling sagged downward like damp cloth. Doors bulged. Faces pressed through the cracks, whispering broken syllables that might once have belonged to other tenants. He ran, but the corridor bent into itself, turning room numbers into nonsense, turning left into right, turning every escape into another return. The notebook in his hand suddenly felt like the last solid object in the world. When he looked down, he saw his own writing fading. Elias first became Elias, then Eli, then only a crooked E. Mrs. Vale glided after him without ever seeming to hurry. "Speak it louder," she called. "If you can keep it, it is yours. If not, the hall will have it." By morning, the police report listed a noise complaint, one abandoned suitcase in the lobby, and no verified tenant in room 17. The lease record could not be found. The neighbors, questioned one by one, denied seeing anyone move in, yet the superintendent who replaced the light bulbs 2 days later swore that one mailbox had contained a label almost impossible to read. The first letter might have been E, or perhaps not. Since then, St. Vay House has changed owners 3 times. Each new listing says the apartments are small but affordable. Each tenant handbook warns residents not to disturb others after quiet hours. None mention the crooked stretch of corridor on the 3rd floor. None mention the woman with the keys. But if you ever pass a row of mailboxes and hear whispering from inside the metal, keep moving. And above all, keep your name inside your teeth.